Welcome to the Quantum Miracles Mastery Docu-series, how to create miracles today so you heal anything. I am honored to bring you the top spiritual leaders and scientists in the world to share techniques and exercises and information on how you can step into the miracle zone, sync to your inner purpose, and shift on a quantum level to heal your trauma, your mind, and your body so that you can expand and thrive. I am your host, Melissa Binkley. I'm a spiritual advisor, entrepreneur, and founder of IIA, the Intuitive Intelligence Academy. I love debunking belief systems that have us all trapped and exploring paradigms that disrupt. I believe in magic and miracles and believe together we can create a conscious revolution. Today on Quantum Miracles Mastery, we're going to be discussing the next evolutionary leap towards wholeness with Val Silidker. She is the co-founder and director of Psychospiritual Institute. She's a paradigm hacker, deep ecologist, board-certified mindset and leadership coach, and coach trainer. Her programs combine transpersonal psychology, coaching, and leadership skills, and conscious business development to address and develop not only ourselves as individuals, but our ability to impact and inspire society as a whole. In this time of global shift, Val works with emerging leaders and visionaries, who out there is one of those, yes, who feel the suffering of our world and want to be a catalyst for change to inspire the highest level of mindset, purpose, and action in their lives. She's been featured on Hay House Radio, NBC, and USA Today, and has had the honor of presenting alongside such luminaries as Don Miguel Ruiz, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Andrew Harvey, and Parker J. Palmer. Over the past few decades, Val has inspired the transformation of thousands of people through the world through her mindful living events, workshops, and coach training programs. And she also does this really amazing 40-day meditation challenge that I've done before, which is super incredible. I met Val years ago when I lived in South Florida, and we've kind of like been on the fringes, kept in contact, done a couple of things together, but that's how I was first introduced to her. And Val is passionate about rewilding our hearts and believes that through love and authentic connection, we are inspired into action towards a more compassionate and whole world. Welcome, Val. So glad to have you here.
Melissa, thank you. It's always good to be in conversation with you. Yeah.
Oh, ditto. I'm so excited today to talk about miracles and the experience of how we can use them to heal our lives. And we have very similar experiences in some of the kind of ways that we move and work in the world. So I think this is going to be one of my most favorite interviews, I'll have to say.
Let's just put that on the table now, guys. So make sure you're
just put it on the table now. So just so you know, what I want to first know is what is your definition of a miracle?
You know, it's interesting when you first ask me, the first thing that comes to me when I hear the word miracle, it's simply being here. Like incredible experience of being here and being aware that we're here. You know, it's like we know that we know who we are. Like we have this amazing ability to see ourselves. It's quite a miracle that we've even come to be. So the first thing is just life and every little teeny simple thing. So for me, a miracle doesn't have to be something that it's like this huge occurrence that we can't wrap our heads around, but the simple things that we experience in life, you know, the way the sun shines and just being in the breath and being in relationship and feeling this love and just being here in this world, the beauty of this world, you know, is a miracle. And I have a practice of just coming into that space whenever I feel thrown off my center to just come back to that, recognizing the entire beautiful miracle of life. So that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, and I love that too, because it's so simple. I think so many people make it this idea of healing and manifesting and miracles and this whole world, they make it so difficult. They're like, that's something out there that I can't have. And it's actually, you're actually sitting in it right at this moment. You're here. Like the exact experience of like, here we are. This is what we get to do. And when you live in that, I believe miracles beget miracles. When you live in that space, they just show up automatically. Like your life just becomes a walking miracle.
It's so magical. Every little thing becomes that. And we attract that when we live in that space, right? When we're open to the playfulness of the magic of life, like we were when we were children. everything becomes amazing. Everything becomes so beautiful, and our relationships deepen, and who we are and how we show up in the world becomes so just profound and powerful. It all begins with that, really recognizing the miracle of us. Yes.
Awesome. I love it. So Val, I'd love to know a little bit more about your mission in life. Like, what are you here to do? You know, what brought you to the Psychospiritual Institute and the work that you're doing in the world right now?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So thank you for starting there. My calling, my spiritual vision, the why that drives me, however you want to say it, it's really about helping us remember who we are in the deepest context, at the core of our sense of self, so that we can live a life that is fully us, fully alive and able to contribute consciously to not only our own lives and how we want to experience this journey, but to a collective movement, an evolutionary movement in our world. So it's helping us remember who we are so we can lead our lives and lead our world forward.
Awesome. And was there a lesson or a trial that brought you to this truth and mission?
Yeah, there's been a series of things, but I would say I think the seed is always in us because it is what we are and who we are, right? But when I really came to understand myself more as like this messenger or this mission of really helping us to reconnect to ourselves and to each other and to our world, um, started about 25 years ago, 25 years ago, in my early 20s.
You don't look old enough to have something started 25 years ago.
But yeah, I had a partner at the time. He was my boyfriend, and he introduced me to something that he was very passionate about, which was recognizing our relationship to other animals. And so he showed me a slaughterhouse video. He showed me a circus video. He started showing me these things that were happening that I had never, ever thought of before in my life. And it literally broke my heart right open. So the story of my really coming into who I am began with this huge heartbreak and really understanding and feeling into the suffering of our world in a way that I had never thought of before. I lived what I felt was a compassionate life, but I was so disconnected from things that I wasn't shown, society kept hidden, or whatever, however you want to say it. And so that led me into a space of deep inquiry about who I am, how I want to live my life, who are we as humans, what does it mean to be in compassion and in relationship to this world. And it started me on a path, long story short, of animal rights activism, leadership, environmental activism, social activism, eventually getting into ecology and kind of expanding that sense of self to recognize who I am in relationship to Earth, right, as my larger body. I was a professor at FIU teaching ecology and deep ecology, which is very much a philosophy that looks at the relationship of humans and the natural world and sees the connectedness and the interdependence of life, and invites us to really look at and make decisions that, choices that honor life in a bigger way. So we're not just living as humans in this myopic vision where we're like taking over the world and displacing other life, but we're looking at how we live in harmony, right? And understanding the greater whole. So I started doing that work, and it just kept going, workshops, speaking, and eventually 4 years ago, I created Psychospiritual Institute, which in a lot of ways is a culmination of all of this work. It's the spiritual psychology, which I've been studying for years, as well as deep ecology, activism, and really understanding how we get to peel back the layers of who we are to understand that deeper essence so that we can live our lives, fully. So yeah, so that's kind of a very short version of a long story and a series of things that just kept guiding me into this work of remembering.
I love that. And I want to focus for a second on the heartbreak piece, because I believe that when you ask to walk the spiritual path, or when you start into that, when you don't even know what your soul is yearning for, that I say it gets a lot worse before it gets better. Like you have this heartbreak, or you have this opening, or you have like what I call the universe hits you with a 2x4. You have these things that like awaken you into that next experience. Is that what you found with a lot of the people that you work with in the experiences, is that there's this like moment defining in time, and it's usually not pretty. It's usually pretty heartbreaking or opening, that allows people to finally take the step into their transformation?
Yeah, there's a term that I'll share right now because I think it's really relevant to the conversation. And it's called positive disintegration. Positive disintegration. And this is what I'm looking back now, having learned and all the things I've learned in the last 20 years or so, I can look back and say, like, this was a time in my life, and we go through many of them, that the things that I thought I knew and the structures that I thought were real, the truths I thought were real, and the way I lived my life, my whole entire paradigm, my whole worldview began to disintegrate and crumble around me. And I was left like sitting in this pile of chaos and mush and snot and tears and like, how do I move forward from this space with this information that I never thought of, or this awakening into myself? And so positive disintegration is a moment in our lives when we come into a dark night of the soul and we don't really know how we're going to move forward. And it feels really discombobulating and scary and chaotic. And like, we don't know what the next step is, but we do know that whatever comes and whatever emerges from that darkness, whatever starts, the pieces start coming back together. We come back together at a higher level than we were before, with more awareness, more consciousness of ourselves, and with a more connected and aligned way of living our lives. And that's what happened for me in that time where I went through that dark night and had to reassess who I am and how I want to be in the world. And I think it's what people go through in general when they feel really lost in it. And I also think collectively it's what our world is experiencing right now. That things are crumbling, systems are breaking apart. There's a lot of death, metaphorically, that needs to actually happen, even though it's going to create chaos and it's going to be massive. And we can already feel it happening. But it's like this collective disintegration is so that these new ways of emerging, these new levels of consciousness, we all get to step into that next phase, this next wave of what it means to be human on this planet.
Wow. Positive disintegration. I've actually never heard that term. And it is, I've heard of the dark night of the soul, but that is such a perfect word and a way of describing a situation. My positive disintegration, or the first one, because I believe I've had several in my life. It was in 2009 where I had come 5 years out of being a drug dealer and drug trafficker and was trying to do all the right things to heal my life. I was like, oh, I'm doing all things. I got the job. I went to work. I got the girlfriend. I was on all these things. And then within a 6-month time frame, I was fired from my job. My partner left me and I was evicted from my apartment and ended up homeless for a year, all within this short amount of time frame. And this positive disintegration was like, if those things had never happened, I know for a fact I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I would not, 11 years later, have taken the steps to really step into my space. And I agree that right now in the world, right, like with our political systems, and, so many people were angry with the presidential elections 4 years ago, right? Or now almost 5 years ago at this point, and all these types of things. But that's that positive disintegration. You have to bring up all of these old structures and all these things and bring them to the forefront and allow all this chaos to happen so that you can reform in a new order. Things don't just, not everything is always on a linear upward slope. It's like things disintegrate and reform in a new layer, reform in a new layer. So I love that positive disintegration. I think that's such a beautiful word. I'm stealing it. I'm going to be
it's not mine either, so like steal it. I just did, but it's
awesome.
Describing it, that really allows us to, I think it also invites us to put a little perspective shift on our experience, because it's like, having looked back at what you just went through, Melissa, or what I've been through and many other things that I've gone through, and everyone listening, it invites us to take to heart the gifts that come from those moments in our lives that feel the hardest, that feel the most challenging, that feel the darkest. And sometimes, we're sitting there, we're like, how in the world do I hold this? Right? Life it can be so big, and there's so much suffering in our world right now that there's no escaping it at the moment, because we feel our collective suffering. We're experiencing a lot. This would be a 10-hour conversation. So much happening in our world right now. With children starving in the world, and with the mass extinction that we're going through, and with the climate of everything, right? That we're all feeling it on some level. And so how do we hold this? How do we hold all of this? And while we're holding it, also recognize the gift of being able to hold it, to expand our capacity to hold what's here, and to know that inevitably we're going to learn. We're going to be shown something about ourselves and who we are, and put on our path, right? In so many ways. And so even if we don't see it right in that moment, if you're going through something right now and you're listening to this and you're like, what is this? Just know that there's something here. Somehow we're setting ourselves up for something greater, right? If we choose to see what that is. Otherwise we can become paralyzed. It could be crushed. But if we allow ourselves to see the gift and what it is, and ask and actually look for it, like, well, what's here? What is? Let's peel this shit apart. What is actually here? That I can take to move forward. We're gonna find gold. We're looking for gold.
Yeah, and those positive disintegrations are actually miracles in our lives. Not all miracles are in the package that we want them to be in, with a little tiny little bow, right? Like, and so
oftentimes they're not.
Most of the time they're not, right? And so I'd love to know, what is something that's been an unexpected miracle in your life that led to healing for you?
Yeah. So even like in the vein of what we're just talking about, the last few years, and I imagine as, we all get older, we experience this more and more, but there's been a lot of death in my life. Like I went through like 2 solid years where I literally lost my best friend, my father, my uncle, my grandmother, another very close friend, my best friend since 5 years old, like so many people. It was like, I couldn't, it was so intense. Like the first one alone was so intense. It was when I was doing the Awaken to Wholeness Summit, which I interviewed you for, right? It was during that time that I literally lost my best friend while I was doing all the recordings. It was so intense. And it was just this period of time that, it was so much grief. It was so much. What the miracle for me in that experience, that was that just, I don't know if I would say totally unexpected, but I think to the degree I didn't expect it, was that in allowing myself to be with the grief and be with the pain and be with the experience fully, be in it, like however it comes in waves. It's so not a linear experience, right? But to be present to it, what it did for me was it created a deeper sense of intimacy with life, which I already felt like I'm in love with life. Like this is Maud from Harold and Maude, like that. I've always had that in me, but something in the last couple of years has even created a deeper experience for me in this intimacy. And I have found myself like in such a deep appreciation, such a deep romance, with what it is to be alive. And that has been an incredible gift, because I just keep saying, like, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And like living my life. And I have a young son. And so it gets to be like the way that I can create my legacy around this, cultivating this intimacy, this beautiful, exquisite experience of what life is, and that came through that experience. That I would consider that a miracle.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful miracle. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that are listening to this that might think, well, yeah, grief and pain, but I want to push it away. I don't want to have that to be a part of my life or bury it. I recently have one of my best friends who lost her father and her mother within 3 months of each other. And then her stepmom, who she's known for 30 years, went to the hospital and had a triple heart attack. And she's literally dealing in this grief that she doesn't know how to handle. And when you're sitting this, I want to know is, how do you honor that? How do you honor that pain and that grief so that it can allow you to support your healing?
Yeah, it's so important. God, Melissa, I sometimes, when I'm speaking, I make this analogy. It's like we're a nation of escape artists, So we're in this world, we're taught that there's good emotions and bad emotions. We want to be happy all the time. And if you feel sad or angry or frustrated or anything other than happy, or some one of those yellow emotions, right, that there's something wrong. And so if we're not happy, we're trying to find ways to escape our discomfort, the uncomfortable feelings, to not feel them. And so we turn to all kinds of things, right? We turn to drugs, we turn to alcohol, we turn to social media, we turn to sex, we turn to a million ways to escape ourselves and not feel. And so it's so important for us to actually turn toward whatever it is that we're experiencing, to breathe through it, to be present to it, and to recognize what it is, because it's only through going through our emotions, like being in the grief, being in the loss, sitting there on the floor, and which I did And I have in the last few years, like where I'm just like, I just collapse onto the floor and I'm sitting there and I'm bawling tears and I'm breathing through it. And I'm also saying, I'm so grateful that I'm allowing myself to feel this, because what it's showing me is my love. We only grieve for what we love. And so if I'm in a deep sense of grief, what I'm also feeling is my love for my father, my love for my dear friends that I'm missing, the joy of having had the experiences I had with them. Like, it's all wrapped up in that grief. But I can't get to the love and the beauty and the joy unless I allow myself to be with that grief and with the pain or the discomfort. And so that is why it's so important for us to be face to face with everything we feel. It also allows us to become more emotionally mature, more spiritually mature, more, our capacity to hold things expands, and we recognize that there's literally a joy that transcends circumstances, a joy that is beyond our emotional experiences, beyond our physical experiences. It is simply a space that we can be in and witness what we feel and witness what's going through us and feel it at the same time, but also witness it both, like the loving observer from this space of neutrality and joy and connection, and the grief or pain. And we can hold it that way and allow ourselves to move through it. And it's powerful to do that. It really shifts our relationship to who we are.
It does. It absolutely does. I've worked over the years with many people that have had like suicide or addictions or things like that. And one of the common themes that I see throughout that is the fact that they're burying the bad emotions, like the things that they don't want to deal with, so deep that they can't feel joy or happiness or love either. Or they take medications, right? And medications just make you flat, right? Or put you in this experience right where you're right here. And so because of those two things, because of doing those two things, they've become this place where they have addiction or they're suicide or things like that. And if you don't feel those emotions, if you don't feel the bad, you'll never feel the good. If you don't work through and heal that, you're never going to be able to enjoy your life, and we'll just numb out, right? Numbing out through drugs or alcohol or sex or TV or, and then that leads into depression and suicide and all of these other things that are really
spiral. It becomes a spiral. Yeah. There's this Cherokee legend of the two wolves, and many people know it. It's like there's a grandfather and he has a battle of two wolves he's telling his grandson, and one is the wolf of love and all those happy emotions and all that connects to that, and one is the wolf of fear, right, and sadness and anger, anything you want to add there. And the grandson says, well, which wolf will win? And he's like, yeah, this is a battle that's going on in all of us. And the grandfather says, the one I feed. But I think that there's a little alternative ending to this, because the one I feed, so if we only feed the wolf of love, that creates the problem in the first place, because now we're ignoring everything that feels uncomfortable, right? But what happens to that wolf? That wolf doesn't go away.
Oh, no.
That wolf continues to stalk you and hunt. It wants attention. So we have to feed both wolves with love. We love the love. That's easy, right? We love the joyful moments. We love the celebration. And we have to love every other emotion that's there, because there's no good and bad. So we have to love the things that come up because we're learning from them. We have to love what they teach us. We welcome those things in like a mother to a child, these beloved parts of us. How do I integrate them back into who I am so I can feel my whole and feel everything? Because I can't feel the depths of love if I don't feel the depths of my sadness. It's all wrapped up together, and when we move through it, we find, like I said, we move through the grief and we find our love. We move through our righteous anger and we find our passion for justice. We move through our fear and we find our courage, right? We move through our hopelessness and we find a space to be filled with hope and action,
Oh, yeah.
We move through it to get the gold, to get the goods.
Yep.
Yeah,
we do. I actually talk about something very similar. I call it traumatude, and I say you actually will get to a place in your life where you'll see the magic, the miracles, when you can have gratitude for the shit, when you can have gratitude for the trauma, when you can have gratitude for all of the things that didn't go right, and feel, like you said, feel the love for that, and hold that space. I remember the moment when I finally knew that I had transformed, when my life would never be the same. Was I had been brutally raped in a garage at the age of 17 in 1994. And 13 years later, I went past that same house and I was a drug trafficker, and I was like this, like, you know, I hadn't been in that hometown, and I was like, you know, screw you and all this, and I'm angry and mad and just festering and feeding things. And through that experience, and I had all this stuff going on. And then recently in 2016, when my daughter was graduating from high school, I got to go back to my old alma mater, and I drove through that same experience again. And this was, or that first time was like 5 years later, and this time was 13 years later. And I went through the same place, and I stopped in the middle of the road, and I put my hands up to my heart, and I just started bawling, and I said, thank you. And because I had realized at that moment that what had happened in that garage, which was just a combination of years of trauma that had already gone on for 10 years prior, but at that was the thing that had allowed me to get to where I was at that moment in 2016, which is when I just become international, and I just started doing a message on a bigger stage. And I knew when I was able to say thank you to the person that had done that to me and have gratitude for that moment, that my life was forever changed. And you know, I know some people say, oh, that's like spiritual woo-woo, you saying gratitude for your, you know, having something bad happen to you. And I'm like, no, I don't, I forgave the person. I'm not saying it was right, but it was my catalyst. It was the thing that helped me. And I love those parts of me that were there, because I went from being into drugs and drug trafficking, where I started out because of that experience, into something that was healing and helping the world. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, thank you for sharing that. That's great, you know, and yeah, and as you're talking too, like, you know, it's so important for us to feel what we feel and be with that, and at the same time, not to get lost in that experience, which is, so that was the difference between your first visit and your second visit, where you still, there still was, the pain of what happened is still present to you, and you can still feel it, but you're feeling it in a different way. You know, it's like, we can identify with something and then disidentify with it, which is the work that we do at the Institute. A lot of this is we come back to ourselves as the loving observer. And now we know that who we are is more than our emotions, more than our experiences and our stories, right? More than the thoughts we think. We're so much bigger than that. And so when we allow ourselves to feel the feelings like we're talking about, it's important that we are also noticing it, as I touched on before. So like the loving observer, we're experiencing the grief, we're experiencing the pain, and we're also noticing that we're experiencing the pain. So we create a distance at the same time between who we are and the contents of our consciousness. And that's key, because if we don't create a distance between that, then we identify we're the victim. We identify we're the depressed person. We identify with, so we don't know that who we are is so much more. So we can say, hey, there's a part of myself. I had this experience. There's a part of myself that has a deep anger around this. You know, there's a part of myself that's having this, there's a part of myself that's feeling this intense grief right now. And I can see it and feel it. And who I am is bigger than my grief. And I can also experience it because it's part of what I'm going through right now. And that's how we hold it in a way that's therapeutic and healthy, and allows us to still have, you know, the disidentification with it, so we don't get overwhelmed or identify too strongly with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that right now we're in the midst of what I call a sacred conscious revolution. You know, I think that we are on the precipice of a whole new society coming about, like a critical mass, right? So how do you define you know, conscious evolution, and how do you see that playing out currently in our world?
I love this question, because this is one of my favorite things to talk about, which brings in like our modern cosmology, the universe story, where we're heading, consciousness, everything. So first I'll say that, like, conscious evolution, right? So conscious evolution is, first we think of like the evolution of our consciousness, right? Becoming more and more aware of ourselves as the universe, right? So 13.7 billion years ago, something tinier than a grain of sand, right? Some mystery gave birth to the universe. It exploded, right, into stellar systems and planets, and eventually the first single cell, and life has evolved. And then at some point, life created a species that became aware of itself, right? And so now we have the self-reflective consciousness, and we have been, with so much curiosity, exploring who we are, right? And the more we begin to understand ourselves, the more we see that we are the universe. we're 0.01% matter. That means we're 0.99999%
Space.
cosmic mystery, intelligence of the universe, all of it's right here. Every power that we discover in physics is inside of us because that's what we are. So consciousness, as we become more and more aware of ourselves and consciousness begins to expand, and we know that who we are is both oneness, absolutely connected with the universe, and our unique individual personal selves. That's very important too, that we're both these things. So consciousness is evolving. And at the same time, as consciousness is evolving, we're becoming more and more aware that knowing who we are, we have the power to create the next evolutionary movement. So consciousness is about, conscious evolution is like the evolution of consciousness and also us consciously evolving. So now we're not just at the whim of things anymore. We get to actually decide how we move forward. And that's the other flip side of conscious evolution. We're evolving consciously. Not just consciousness is evolving, like we're consciousness evolving, and now we're like evolving ourselves. And that's powerful. So right now we're pioneers. We've never been here before, where we have so much information from science about who we are, more than we ever have before. We have a sense of intuition. We have all like indigenous cultures. We know the earth connection, all of that's here. And this marriage of spirituality and science is like, boom, non-duality. Here we are, and we get to, now that we know this, decide how we move forward, and then how we also express that universal awareness, that intelligence and collective wisdom through our unique individual selves. And that's so exciting for me. How am I showing up as Val? How are you showing up as Melissa, knowing that who we are is ultimately interconnected and part of this something much larger that weaves us together? How do we show up as a piece of this universe, like expressing itself as me? So that's what I see when I think of conscious evolution and like this whole evolutionary movement, that we now get to decide how we move forward if we center into ourselves and do the work of peeling back these conditioned layers of society. There's a lot of work that has to be done, but here we are right on the precipice as pioneers on the edge of this next quantum leap, of what it means to be human. And that's exciting. Can't tell.
That is very exciting. I'm super excited too. Yeah, I love your answer. That's just it's such a beautiful way of looking at it, and in such easy terms for people to grasp and understand. So let's talk a little bit about the work. I know much of your work is focused on a new paradigm leadership and self-leadership. Can you share just a little bit more about that, and what does it mean to lead ourselves in the time of this global change and this conscious evolution?
Yeah, good. So just kind of actually picking up on what we've just been talking about a bit, which is the peeling back the layers part. So yes, a lot of the work that I do and I've been doing for a long time is around leadership. How do we lead our lives so that we can step forward as leaders in the world? And first and foremost is taking a deeper look within, right? We have to understand not only the bigger question of who we are, like as the universe, right? But also who we are in our personal way. And so we're born into this world unstoried. We're born into this world as children unstoried. And very quickly we begin to make meaning out of our experiences. Girls do this, boys do this, right? This is how society works. Money drives the world. Like whatever it is that you're taught from your parents, from your school, from your church perhaps, or religion, like whatever it is, like we're taught so many things. And then we also have our own personal experiences, small and large traumas that may happen to us in our lives that create identity and stories and meaning. And over time, we begin to layer from this like unstoried self. Here's another story. Here's an identity. Here's the way I'm supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to live. Boom, boom, boom. We start piling on all of this stuff on top of us until we're not really sure who we are. We're not really sure what we want out of life. We think we want to have $1 billion in the bank and 10 cars, but somehow that doesn't really feel meaningful. So well, maybe my purpose is to, have a great big business and make lots of money or whatever it is. Like, maybe that's really not what's meaningful to me. Maybe that's just what I was taught. So we have to start really diving in. Who am I? It's the biggest question in the world. And so we start peeling back those layers to understand our identities and our stories and our self-sabotaging thoughts, our limiting beliefs, and the science behind them, the root of how we form them inside of ourselves, or sometimes from an outer source, from society or socioeconomic status or whatever it is that's shaped us, right? So we do this work of peeling back those layers. And the more we peel and the deeper we become connected to our deeper sense of self and source and greater sense of purpose in the world, the more we get to lead ourselves by making choices that align with who we are, right? So if this is not really the thing that's been driving me, but this is actually what feels really meaningful to me, well, how does that change how I show up? So now the self-leadership is really where we start. Because if I really care about the planet, if I really do care about, other children having enough food, if I really do care about children being forced to make clothes in sweatshops, how does that affect how I buy and consume? How does that affect, where I put my children in school? So we have to ask those questions. So self-leadership is very much about peeling back the layers, getting to know who we are at the core beyond the conditions of society, and reestablishing our behavior so we're aligned. And from that space, we then begin to ripple into the world as we show up in larger ways as leaders, right? So simply by living our lives this way and creating a natural ripple effect. And in other ways, we might be called and driven and really passionate about showing up to lead organizations or lead movements or get involved in things that are going on even bigger than our own individual world. So that's this new paradigm leadership. It's recognizing who we truly are and living our way into that so we can collectively create the world that we want for ourselves and our children and our future ones that have not been born yet.
Oh, wow. Awesome. All right. So in a minute, I'm going to have Val share with us one like small technique or something that's going to allow us to start peeling back those layers, peeling back that onion. But before we do, I want you all to know that Val has an amazing gift for us today. She's going to, and if you look at the link below, you can grab it right there, put in your information. Val, why don't you share a little bit about the gift that you're giving to everybody for showing up today?
Yeah, beautiful. So this is a really awesome gift. I'm very excited about it. And you will be too. It's called the Ideal Model Exercise. And it's an exercise that's pulled from the spiritual psychology work that I teach and I train people in called psychosynthesis, which is an over 100-year-old transpersonal psychology, the root of the transpersonal psychology movement. And this comes from psychosynthesis. And the ideal model is, it's basically it's an exercise that moves you through some of the false ways, like the inauthentic ways that we tend to show up in the world, right? So we under-evaluate ourselves or over-evaluate ourselves, or the secret daydream model of who we think we're supposed to be, or the ways people project onto us. And we start to look at these in detail, and it's peeling back those layers, right? And then it brings you through a series of the false models and then invites you to create your ideal model, which is the next step of who you really are and who you're becoming. And everything begins with imagination. Everything starts with imagining. And so this exercise very powerfully engages that psychological function of imagination and allows you to begin to create and envision and fully embody the person that you know you need to be in the world. So it's really powerful. Definitely go grab that.
Yeah, definitely grab the Ideal Model exercise below. And if you love what you're listening to, share this with your friends. Tell everybody. Hit the share button, give it out, let people know, because we're going to be doing some amazing things here with Quantum Miracles Mastery. And maybe you'll even be able to join me for Transform Live that's coming up, a live event that's going to teach you how to create more miracles in your life. So now I have 3 more questions before we end. The first one is, I believe that people, when they're transforming their lives, believe it takes a complete overhaul. But what is one ritual, practice, or thing that you cannot live without? Something that people can start with right now to start their transformation.
Awesome. So a lot of the work that we do and that we're all doing in the world focuses around becoming more aware, right? Awareness. And that's so important. Like, that's where we begin. And I also know and believe that there's a whole other thing that we need to work on, which is our will. So we can peel back these layers and become super aware of who we are, and great, I got it. And then somehow we're still not doing it, right? Like, I want to be healthy, I'm having digestive issues, but that chocolate cake looks good. And before you know it, you're eating it. Like, wait a minute, I know, and I'm aware, and I have this and I want, but why did that not happen? And so we tend to neglect our will to move who we know we need to be, and really activate our behavior and our actions that are in alignment with what we know and we're becoming aware of through all this awesome work we're doing, right? So I want to offer a couple ideas of how you can exercise your will.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's super easy. And yeah, it just takes some presence and time. So some ideas, just a couple ideas of what we can do. So I'm bringing this from the top of my head, but one of them that I'll share with you is to do something intentionally, very slowly. Now remember, this is for no other reason than to exercise our will, to show that we're capable of doing things. So you might just do something very, very slowly. Another one would be to say no when you need to say no.
That's big. You know how many people don't do that?
Yeah. Say no when you need to say no, which is always a yes to you. A no is always, there's always a yes behind that no. So no when you need to say no. Another thing might be to simply do something for the sake of doing it, like, taking matchsticks and taking them out and then placing them back in.
Yeah.
Just simple things, very simple things that you can do to start exercising your will. Gosh, I'm trying to think of some more. I have a long list.
I love the first one. I'm going to do that. I'm going to practice that one today. Do something very slowly. I really love the idea behind that. I already say no, which is a yes to me. And I do a meditative thing where, like you said, like doing nothing for nothing, right? Like that's very meditative. So I love that one. But I think that I'm going to steal the first one and try to do something very slowly because I'm a very fast talker and a very fast mover. And so to slow it down and just
intentionally slow,
intentionally slow
down that
awesome.
Exactly. Another thing would be like when you wake up in the morning, if you have a ritual that you always do, make a different decision. Make a different decision. Try one new thing. Try one new thing the next day, right? So just finding ways that you can start exercising your will, because believe it or not, they seem like simple, tiny things, but when you start to do them consciously, you really get into your sense of power, the power to choose. And life is always about decisions. And we always have the ability to make a new decision anytime in our lives about how we're showing up. So when something feels like we're confronted with a hard decision, we want to go slip back into, a part of ourselves that is not really supporting us at that moment.
Yeah.
Make that new decision. So practice exercising your will. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Okay. We're almost done. We got to get through these. You're on your deathbed and you have one truth that you can leave for all your friends, family, and humanity to know. What would you say?
Oh, goodness. I am actually going to share the last thing my grandmother said to me before she died, like literally the last thing the day of, and it has always stayed with me, and I will just pass that on. The greatest gift in life is love. The greatest gift in life is love. Loving yourself, loving each other, deepening into relationships, being at peace with what is, present to what is, fall in love with what is. Love the miracle, right? The greatest gift.
Awesome.
So that is a legacy.
That's perfect. And if you could do one thing in this world before you pass to the next realm, what would you do?
I could do one thing in this world before I pass to the next world. That's a tough one. Gosh, there's a lot. There's like the obvious.
There's so many. I have people like, so it might be maybe something like super adventurous or super like, it could be any kind of thing, but just one thing that give people ideas of things that they might want to do.
Well, like it's like immediately I'm like, oh, there's so many things that I want to do, like travel and stuff like that. But I feel like it's something around having before I die. So, I have this little vision. It's like, when after we die, we have a celebration of life party.
Yeah.
We celebrate the people when they're gone. And I always wonder, like, if I knew like my time was coming, I would invite all the people that were meaningful for me to come and be together, like all my lovers that moved me and all my people that touched me and I would want them all to just come and be with me and celebrate the journey with them and the memories with them, and like feel like that would feel so complete to me. And then take that last breath and like, oh, what a journey.
I love this. I was just at the funeral that I was at recently, and my exact words were this, that I would do that instead of having, I would be like, I would put out it, you know, things like, oh, Melissa has passed, and everybody, and then you show up and be like, no, I really haven't. Let's have the party before I go because I'm passing. You know, that's that kind of thing. I love that. That's my favorite. Everyone, I want you to grab the ideal model exercise below. Thank you, Val, for your wisdom and your love and your experience and for the work that you do in this world. And everyone else, join and share about Quantum Miracles Mastery. And I can't wait to see you live at Transform Live. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much.
Mwah.